Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming to our body positivity chat, body positivity in quarantine. I am Adrienne. I am the Wellness Center dietitian, also one of the staff members that help facilitate the Body Project on campus. And this is Maddie.
I'm Maddie. I'm one of the licensed clinical social workers at the Wellness Center, also one of the staff involved with the Body Project at Loyola. And just a little bit more about the Body Project. This is a group on campus that is full of student peer leaders who facilitate workshops and put on other events to sort of help us all think more about body diversity and acceptance and question and reject different ideals of beauty and gender that we've all dealt with.
Yeah. So we're going to try and do this conversation in about an hour, and we have a lot of stuff to talk about. We had a few questions before this conversation started. We'll try and answer as well. But if afterwards you have any questions, you can just go ahead and send them to us, and we'll try and respond. Also, please get some snacks. We have some popcorn.
Yeah, we do.
And some chocolate chips.
Yeah, we do.
So, get comfy, and here we go.
And also we should say, if you're interested in learning more about the Body Project or joining the Body Project, we are recruiting facilitators on a rolling basis. You can find us on social media at the Body Project LUC on Instagram. You could also read more about us on the Wellness Center website, which is luc.edu/wellness, or you can feel free to email us directly at bodyproject@luc.edu. So feel free to reach out or apply or ask questions about this conversation or anything else. All right, so why don't we just check in, Adrienne? We initially tried to have this conversation on Instagram Live, and that didn't go according to plan. But we're here now, and so we've got our snacks ready. Maybe we could just kind of warm up a little bit, talk about, other than this very conversation, maybe what has been the highlight of your day so far?
Of my week?
Or your week.
Oh.
Or your week.
All right, so the highlight of my week was that yesterday I decided to watch Too Hot to Handle, the reality TV show on Netflix, which is definitely trashy and definitely a great change of pace from working from home all day. So that's been fun. What about you, Maddie?
Those are great. I've also been watching Too Hot to Handle. I would say one highlight of my week so far is that I got to connect with some friends last night across 3 different time zones, and we all got to be together virtually to catch up. So it's an ongoing silver lining of this time. I feel like it's been easier to connect with folks that may not be geographically all that close, but that tends to feel less of an issue when we've all got some extra time and space and things like that. And I've also been cooking a ton and eating a lot of really good food. And so that's been a silver lining too. Okay, cool. So let's dive in. So the overall conversation topic today is navigating body image during this COVID-19 pandemic. And just wanted to give a little context for why we're having this conversation. So maybe you can get us started on that, Adrienne. Just why are we doing that?
Yeah. So I've just been seeing a lot of comments or, things that my friends have said or coworkers about body image during quarantine. It's been a lot more difficult. And I've even seen this trend of COVID-19 kind of similar to a freshman 15, like this inevitable weight gain that's going to happen from quarantine. You know, I think I think, living through like a giant, large scale traumatic experience. And we have to find a new normal, which is being inside all the time with ourselves. So I think it's only natural for us to start like realizing maybe some self-confidence issues, like they're really coming to light now. You know, you have to cook your own foods. There's also some like food scarcity of not being able to shop as often. So there's just a lot of factors that are playing a role in body image right now. And I know that we live in a culture normally that's really related to like weight loss and dieting. And so it's only exacerbated now that we have all this extra free time to really like nitpick at ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, just want to like kind of talk about all of that and talk about some ways to maybe deal with that during this time. And I've seen like a lot of fat jokes online. I don't know if you've seen those, Maddie, but like, why do you think those are so popular right now?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's definitely related to a lot of what you just shared as far as like the discomfort of this time, the increased amount of actual time that we may have on our hands day to day. I think humor is often used as a tool to navigate discomfort, and that isn't inherently bad. However, when we are making jokes like the COVID-15 or making sort of flippant comments or memes or having conversations with friends sort of offhand about weight gain during this time or different sort of like body image or appearance related consequences of this time that have nothing to do with actually like being sick. We're really just missing a lot about how that can really be harmful to others. And when we are like making jokes and talking lightly about a lot of this, we are not necessarily interacting with like whatever we might actually be thinking or feeling about it, right? So like, you know, if you find that you're sitting around a lot more because your classes are online or you're working from home and you're not able to move like you used to move, or you are eating differently, either feeling more hungry or snacking more or whatever it may be, there are like very reasonable explanations for all that that we'll continue to talk about throughout the course of this discussion. And that's okay. And when we make jokes about it, sometimes it has this connotation that it's problematic or that it's like sort of like an unresolved issue potentially, right? So if you notice that these changes are happening, maybe sort of rather than joking about it or further kind of perpetuating these like jokes or memes, you can sort of interrogate that thought, that feeling, and be like, why is this making me want to like kind of engage in this joking behavior or keep sharing this information in a lighthearted way, when really it might be something that makes me feel uncomfortable, or I might feel fearful about some of this stuff, stressed out by it, or unsure of like what to do about it, right? And I think that when we just kind of participate in these larger conversations in a really flippant way, we miss that. Not to mention that we are kind of either knowingly or unknowingly potentially perpetuating really fat phobic norms. You know, when we talk about the freshman 15 or the COVID-15, there is an implication in that this is like a bad thing. Like gaining weight is bad. Like kind of having a change in your body size or shape is bad. That's a thing that like I think because of how we are socialized, many of us like understand that implicitly. And so when we continue to talk about things like that in that way, we're further endorsing that and kind of like moving the ball like further in a way that just continues to keep these norms alive and well, and continues to other people who may have larger bodies or might experience weight gain or whatever it may be, you know, may not just fit into these like norms and ideals of thinness or beauty or whatever we see in magazines or have learned over time from our cultures or our families like are beautiful. And yeah, I think that's a lot of it. And I think also, you know, for folks who struggle with eating disorders, to continue to see all of this material on social media or hear it from friends, hear it from family, fears of weight gain or concerns on that front, you know, kind of talking badly about snacking or sitting still, like all of that can be really harmful to those folks who might feel like further isolated from services at this time, or isolated from supports at this time. And so, you know, we will all make mistakes, and like, that's okay. You know, I think we can be thoughtful and learn and grow and kind of build on progress. And at the same time, I think it's good to have these conversations because it might just make us like think twice before we just continue to participate in conversations as we might have previously. So maybe we can talk a little bit about why people might be experiencing a change in their eating behaviors.
Yeah, I can talk about that a little bit more. Like what you were saying, it's totally normal right now to have such a change in your eating behaviors or your thoughts about eating. You know, there's a lot of different reasons that could be affecting the way that you're eating now. You know, there's kind of two ends of the spectrum that people might be experiencing. First, there's this one end of like no appetite or very low appetite that people might be experiencing, and that can feel really different and weird. And that's totally a normal response. You know, what we're experiencing right now is pretty difficult, and we might be having a lot of stress, and to our body that feels like a flight or fight response. You know, it doesn't really know that COVID-19 is happening. It just like is preparing for danger. Like it could be chased by a bear, and the same physiological response is happening inside. And you know, if it's an immediate danger, the point is to like be prepared. So it's tense, it's ready. It's not like wanting to eat right now. And so if you're experiencing like a lack of appetite, that could be from that like tension and being in this flight or fight physiological response. And so I think the first step, if you are experiencing like a decrease in appetite, is to really check in and see how you're feeling. If you're noticing you're really tense throughout the day and you are feeling that anxiety, then maybe trying to calm down and prepare for eating a meal. You know, you could work up an appetite by some light exercise like walking or yoga. You could try some meditation to check in with yourself, and then, or maybe like drinking some warm tea and like calming the body down. So that could be one end of the spectrum that people are experiencing a change in their appetite. And then the other end, which I've heard a lot more about, is this increase in wanting to eat snacks all the time, or maybe not even an increase in appetite, but just like snacking more often. And that's also really normal and natural to a lot of different things. You know, first of all, food is comfort. And if we're feeling stressed or sad or bored, then food can be that thing that gives us comfort in those moments. And we get that like positive reward right away. And so then it becomes this like coping mechanism over time. You know, if we are stressed, our body also does need those like instant energy sources for if it was in danger and it needed to run.
Right.
It would need something that's like quick energy. And those quick energy sources are like the less healthy options, like simple sugars like chocolate and ice cream. So that could be why cravings for those certain foods even increase. And then, you know, another piece could be if you're experiencing food restriction, either mentally or physically. So maybe before even quarantine happened, you were on a diet, trying a new diet, or you're calorie counting, or you're doing that now. That could be that mental food restriction. Or maybe you're experiencing food insecurity, like, you know, you're going to the grocery store, you're having to go to the grocery store less, you don't have the same financial resources, it feels more difficult to obtain food. So whenever we have that like control of food, it makes us feel less in control around food, which is kind of counterintuitive. But so I think like really noticing kind of what's at play here. What are you feeling and experiencing mentally and physically? And those do affect your appetite and how hungry you are throughout the day. And then of course there's like a huge shift in our routine, right? Like maybe you ate in between classes before because you only had an hour, and now like you have no routine. You don't have to get up at a certain time of day. Like that throws off your eating schedule as well. Maybe we can talk about like ways to fix it, and talk about like we'll go talk about this later of the actual food behaviors, but maybe more about like what you were talking about, Maddie, of like this fat phobic culture and talk.
Yeah.
How do we
Yeah, totally. So, I mean, I think that these different approaches fit together, right? Like paying more attention to the different shifts you might have experienced, both kind of like externally in terms of these current circumstances, where, you know, these terms were kind of dictated to us, right? Like you have to kind of shelter in place and make these quick and drastic transitions to our daily lives. Can really wreak havoc on our sense of control. And then there's this lingering uncertainty about like what life will be like moving forward, and what, if any, you know, return to normalcy we'll experience and when. And so I think, you know, humans, to your point, are like hardwired for survival and also control and predictability. And that's like when we really thrive is like when we know what to expect and when we can predict for things to be relatively consistent. And all of that is upended right now. So I think reasonably, like we are having a lot of involuntary responses in our bodies, in our minds. And so in order to try to counter some of this, I think that we can really kind of like shift away from both this kind of like endemic fat phobic language, but also increase our like ability to be gentle with ourselves by practicing more compassion. So compassion for others, compassion for ourselves. We can't really stop thoughts from coming up, right? So like if you're listening to this and you're thinking about times you might have engaged in conversations where you evoked some of these like fat phobic themes, you know, the idea isn't for you now to feel bad, because then that may only make your behaviors like more complex and hard to regulate. We're really preaching gentleness here, right? Like ideally we would phase out this kind of communication because it would be less normed in society. We've got a long way to go. And so I think, you know, being gentle with yourself for maybe not knowing better, and then just doing what you can as you move forward. And so what this looks like may not be that you will never think again of a fat phobic thing, but rather when the thought shows up, you might choose not to write it out or say it out loud, or, you know, kind of take it in with the same level of sincerity that perhaps you might have previously like kind of used or just sort of like interacted with. So yeah, so I think the idea here is not to be like kind of calling people out left and right for having thoughts that they didn't ask for, but rather just like learning how to change the relationship to those thoughts. And so I think that that comes from a place of cultivating compassion, both for ourselves and for other people. So yeah, I think when you think that when you have a thought about like weight gain or concerns on that front, or noticing a change in someone else's body or whatever it may be, rather than just kind of going with that thought or saying whatever you're thinking out loud, maybe tune inward and ask yourself, like, how am I doing? Right? Like, how am I doing right now? And what might be like driving this behavior? What might be driving this thought? What might be driving this feeling? And like, what do I need right now? So for example, if I'm being really critical of another person's appearance, is there something going on with me potentially? Like, am I feeling okay about myself, my appearance, my personality, like my social connectivity? Like, are all my things in order? Because most likely not, right? Like, generally speaking, when we're being hypercritical of other people, there's something up with us. Generally, we are more able to like see and receive the good in others when we feel okay about ourselves. So just kind of questioning that a little bit and seeing if we are having negative feelings about ourselves, like, can we neutralize any of that? So like not expecting that we're going to go from some like high level of self-criticism to self-love overnight, but perhaps just seeing if it's possible to move the needle at all from like super negative to neutral. So, you know, if I'm having a negative thought about myself, can I just kind of shift it slightly? Like, you know, if I'm thinking I'm such like a lump today, I just laid around and did nothing, like, can I instead shift that thought ever so slightly to say, you know, today was a really chill day. I had a chill day today, rather than sort of beating myself up for being lazy or, you know, unmotivated or whatever the case may be, or how those thoughts originally showed up, just trying to kind of shift it ever so slightly. Yeah, I'm trying to think of what else we might want to talk about on that front. Yeah, I think another thing that can be helpful too is just to kind of be, again, like a curious observer of these thoughts and ask ourselves, like, is this thought helpful, right? Like this thought, like, I need to lose 10 pounds before I leave the house again. Like, is that a helpful thought? Like, what is that doing for us? Is that potentially promoting, you know, food restriction, or maybe even binging, or just, you know, more emotion dysregulation? Like, what is like happening in relation to this thought? Is this serving us well? And just kind of beginning to notice that. And if you are having a hard time managing the thoughts that you're having, like, there are lots of mental health professionals out there. The Wellness Center continues to be open. Like, we are ready, willing, and able to assist with this stuff. And so, yeah, I think that those are some things that we might do.
Do you think that you could share like an example of if someone is, you know, let's say they have an increase in how much they're eating throughout the day and feeling guilty about it, like what would be an example of how to shift that thinking?
Yeah. So, I mean, again, like, I think kind of weaving these things together, right? So, I think one way to start kind of neutralizing the thinking around this is to become more of a curious observer of this behavior, right? So I'm noticing that I'm eating more rather than assuming I'm eating more because I'm bad and because I have no self-control, right? That's like a thing we'll hear a lot. Like, I'm eating a lot because I have no self-control. It's like, is that really what's going on here? Or is it possible that also my routine is completely out of whack? I don't at meal times. I'm waking up at different times every day and going to sleep at different times every day. You know, are there any other things that I can observe throughout the course of my day that have changed that might be related to this, right? So kind of just starting from like a real logistical kind of like, what is going on right now perspective. And if I can observe that there are other things that have changed that might be impacting this, is it possible for me to let myself off the hook a little bit and kind of like have some grace and just know that this is a really stressful time, and that, like, understandably, I am managing a little bit differently than I have before. And if I want to shift a focus, if I'm noticing that I'm managing in part by eating, right? Like, if I'm seeking comfort through food more than I might be seeking comfort through other skills, seeing if it's possible to, you know, again, seek support, get some help, or engage any skills I've learned before, just so that it's not the only one I have, right? Like, not that seeking comfort through food is inherently bad, but if it's the only thing I know how to do to gain comfort, then, like, can I broaden that skill set a little bit? But I think one of the main things sort of in all of that is to let myself off the hook a little bit for managing how I know how to manage, right? Like, this is how I've gotten through stuff before that's been really stressful. That's probably why I'm doing it. And, you know, just not kind of beating myself up further for that, because that can just kind of promote really cyclical behavior. Like, if I feel bad and then I pig out, so then I feel bad, so then I pig out, right? Like, around go. And I don't feel like I have control at all. And the feelings of like shame and guilt are just sort of inescapable in that cycle, I think.
Yeah. So I think that kind of like leads into what I wanted to bring up more about, like, mindful eating.
Yeah, please.
And yeah, it's like a pretty popular topic, right? Like, we hear mindful eating, mindful fill in the blank, and it's like, what does that even really mean? But it's pretty much what you were just talking about, like trying to be more aware of what's going on during the day. Like, oh, I'm feeling more hungry right now, and I also have 3 exams that I'm trying to study for. Like, that's that might be why I feel hungry, because I'm feeling like an increase in stress and want to find comfort for that. So mindful eating is really just that. It's how it sounds, you know, trying to be present and pay attention to your hunger and your satiety cues or your fullness cues, you know, while you're eating and not while you're eating. So you could try and notice those like physical hunger cues, like if your stomach is growling, or how you have that like empty feeling, or you notice you're getting low energy again. If you think back like, oh, it's been a few hours since I've eating like last, that makes sense that I'm starting to feel like maybe a tiny headache, or you know, those physical hunger cues. And then when you are eating, like trying to really be present with that moment and limit distractions, and pay attention to what you're eating and how you're feeling, and you know, eating slowly and trying to savor really what it is you're eating. Notice, then you'll be able to notice too, like when you are feeling full and satisfied, and then in between meals, that's when you can kind of do those check-ins of like, oh, I'm noticing that I'm snacking a lot. Why am I snacking? Like, what's going on today? Did I like sleep well last night? Have I been looking at the news a lot? Have I, you know, really just being mindful when you're getting those hunger cues. And a lot of things that you could, or so it doesn't have to be, you know, it doesn't have to feel so overwhelming or vague. Like even just asking yourself, am I hungry? You know, just that simple question, because a lot of times maybe like, no, I'm thirsty, and at first it might be hard to decipher that, but the more you ask it, the easier it will get over time. And I know sometimes too, a big misconception with mindful eating is that if you allow yourself to eat anything and you're not on like a strict diet, then it will be like this loss of control, and that your body will want all the bad things all the time. But, you know, our body naturally craves vegetables and nourishing foods. So the more that you pay attention to it, you'll be able to hear it telling you like, hey, like, yeah, I want some chocolate now, but that's because I also like maybe had a great salad for lunch or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, and I think too, you can try and keep somewhat of a routine, but in those moments, maybe in between a routine or getting started, it will feel a little difficult. So really just trying to check in with yourself a little bit more frequently of like, how am I feeling today? How are my meal times? What do my meal times even look like? If it feels awkward at first too, to kind of like savor the flavor during meal times, you could always call a friend and have like a virtual meal lunch. And yeah, another part of mindful eating is like this exercise. Um, yeah, like our change in exercise. You know, maybe before you had access to a gym or you're walking around campus a lot, and that's changed. And so it's really now about finding ways to exercise that are fun and that are for reasons other than weight loss. Um, so trying to find things that maybe you've never done before, that's like a challenge that you've always wanted to try, or if it's even just like getting yourself outside for a walk, then you get to connect to nature. Like trying to find reasons other than weight loss for exercise, you know, like de-stress.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I wanted to maybe talk about some personal examples. I don't know if you've been doing any exercising at home. I know it's been kind of hard for me. But if there's anything that we could maybe suggest to people watching for ways to stay active.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that information is so helpful, and I think that a lot of people are normed with this idea that they like have to exercise for like weight related reasons. And I think when you can engage in movement in like a more pleasurable way, if you can figure out what that is for you, I think it's a little different for everybody. I feel like you can really experience like all the benefits that come along with it, right?
Right. And it's way easier to stay consistent because you actually enjoy what you're doing.
Yeah, totally. So one thing I've been really enjoying is there's this dance class / like company called Dance Church that is originally based in Seattle. And they've been doing live streams called Dance Church Go 2 times a week. And I've been making it like a weekly ritual to do it every Sunday with one of my friends on FaceTime. So I've got her on FaceTime on my phone, and I've got my computer up with Dance Church live stream going, and I just dance around for an hour, and it's so much fun. The music's always great. They give like some direction, but every direction is pretty much just punctuated with dance, and then you just kind of dance. So it's really liberating. It's really fun. It's really sweaty. And it's just like a great way to move and get some energy and stress out of my body. And yeah, I feel like that's something that, you know, aligns with things I like to do and feels really fun and silly. And
it's kind of funny to like go with your friend to the dance class too.
Totally. What about you? Is there anything that you've been enjoying or trying to get into your routine?
Yeah. I have always seen people online doing like handstands. And I've always been so jealous. Like I just always wanted to be able to do one. So I found like a couch to handstand 30-day yoga series, and I was like, let's do it. And so I've been trying to do that kind of every day, they're only like 30-minute videos, so it's great. And I've noticed already like small progress, like a small change every day. So that's been so fun. It makes me feel so like powerful.
Yes.
So that's been my like exercise that I try and do every day. If not, I'll just like go for a walk outside and get some fresh air. I've just been loving like getting to exercise on my time. Like sometimes I'll do it in like the middle of the day as like a refresher from work, like during my lunch break. So that's been so fun and nice. Kind of in that realm of stuff to do at home, is there maybe any body positive exercises that you would suggest for people trying on their own?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think we've covered some of this already. But I think like, again, I cannot reinforce more, like, if you can be gentle with yourself, if you can give yourself a break for thinking the way you think, you will be that much more able to make any kind of change. So I think like understanding that your brain and body have been doing what they've been doing for however long you've been alive. And so realistically, like if you're going to make any kind of meaningful change, it's going to take time, which means like there will be days where it feels hard and days where it feels less hard. And just sort of knowing that, and especially you put the context of this moment on top of all of that, and it might make it even a little bit more challenging, right? Or a lot more challenging. You know, it's a stressful time. So gentleness. One thing that I think can be really helpful in particular in managing negative thoughts is this technique called distancing, where basically when you're having a negative thought, especially one about yourself, instead of just kind of like hearing it, right? Like if I'm having a thought, like I am so lazy, instead of just sort of like having that thought and maybe saying it again to somebody or just sort of letting it play on repeat in my brain, sort of repeating it back to myself, but inserting the phrase, I'm having the thought that. So I'm having the thought that I'm so lazy. It creates distance between like knowing it and hearing it and kind of separating it from a fact that you know to a thought that you're having. So it sort of speaks to the temporary nature of thoughts and can remind your brain that this is a thought you're having right now, but it might not be a thought that you're going to continue to have moving forward. So I think that can be really helpful to just sort of like remind yourself of the temporary nature of thoughts by putting some distance in there. I also think, I think a lot of people hear over the course of their lives that if they can say nice things to themselves, they might start to believe them. I think that can be really hard for a lot of people who've struggled with, persistent body image stuff, which is normal, or different issues around self-confidence or self-esteem. And so again, rather than expecting that you are going to be able to like look in the mirror and identify all these things that you love about yourself, maybe start from a more neutral place. Start from a place, maybe not physical, maybe something that, you know that you enjoy, a hobby, a skill, a compliment someone gave you once about something you did, right? If you can't generate that for yourself right away, that's okay. Can you remember something that someone else said to you? I think it's also really helpful sometimes to challenge the way that we talk to ourselves by asking if we would say that to a friend or a loved one. I think it's, again, pretty normed to be self-critical. Like, I think that we accept that as like a thing that's okay for people to be mean to themselves, that we can beat ourselves up, but we have to be kind to each other. And I think if we flip the script a little bit, not to say we should like be mean to everyone else, but if we say like, hey, if I have this capacity to be so great to other people, what's getting in the way of me doing that for myself? And in the same way, like if I can't think of something nice to say about myself that I appreciate, why are there people out there saying anything kind to me? Clearly I'm having an impact. Clearly I'm connecting, right? So just being able to take this stuff in without, kind of brushing it off or explaining it away or being sarcastic or jokey about it. So yeah, starting from a place of like, just kind of neutral to less neutral. So maybe we can give some examples of things that we like about ourselves. I don't know. Do you want to give it a try?
Sure. Yeah. Do you want me to start? I'll start.
Yeah, go for it.
So
it doesn't need to be physical. It can be, again, like a trait of your personality, a skill, a thing you enjoy doing, whatever it is.
Yeah, I would say something that I really appreciate about myself is my creativity. Like I think I'm pretty resourceful, and I use that a lot like when cooking and making like crafts. Like I've made like furniture out of like caps before, just random stuff. And it feels so cool to like be able to complete something out of like what you thought was there's nothing there. And then, so yeah, I would say, yeah, that's like one of the things that I appreciate about myself. I guess like, sure. I think like a more physical thing, this is actually really difficult for me, but I appreciate my arms, which is something I'm still not 100% confident in, but I'm learning to appreciate them because they are pretty strong, and I can do a pull-up, which is really cool, and not many people can say that. So I'm trying to see that as like a really great thing, and yeah, not be so self-conscious of them.
Yes. Yeah, and I think that's key too, right? Like with certain physical traits, like even if we might not comment on their appearance, can we speak to their functionality, right? Like I may not identify my legs as like the thing that visually makes me feel the most comfortable, but like I can do a lot of stuff with them. Like I can dance every Sunday. Like I can, jump up and down. I can walk around everywhere I've been, right? Like climb up the stairs to get to my apartment. Like all these things that I think that sometimes we really take for granted can help us develop that self-respect and positive self-image. So
what about you, Maddie?
Oh, me? Yeah, I think sort of along similar lines, I will say I really, I appreciate my ability to bring folks together, just in being able to, have conversation or share meals or spend time, or I love like introducing people to each other. So all of that I think is something that is related to my capacity, and I'm going to take some credit for that. I also, I feel like my eyes are something that, despite the fact that they can't see so good all the time without these guys, they have always been like a cool part of my body to me. They change color a little bit depending on what colors I'm wearing. And yeah, on a more kind of functional level, like they allow me to see everything I've seen. And, in the work that I do as a social worker, as a therapist, like eye contact is a huge way to connect. And so I think that just facilitates a lot of the cool things in my life, both at work and outside. So
yeah.
Maybe we could talk a little bit about like managing social media.
Yeah.
Especially during this time, right? Like what suggestions we might have about how folks can monitor and manage their responses to their social media feeds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I would say the first thing to do is to be critical of your social media feed and anything that does not serve you anymore, kind of like your thoughts, you're like, oh, does this thought serve me? It doesn't, so I don't need to buy into it. Same thing on your social media feed, like if you see something, and just be a little bit more critical while you're scrolling. Sometimes we'll just mindlessly scroll, right? And be like, is any of this like serving me? And if it's not, just unfollow them. You can always go back and check on their page later on if you are really missing that. But that would be the first thing, is just anything that's unhelpful. Bye.
Yeah, 100%. I would agree with that completely. I think a lot of us, if not all of us who participate in social media, are aware of some of the pitfalls of it, like how it can really make us second guess the quality of our own lives when we're seeing certain things portrayed in certain lights on social media. And many of us do know like what accounts really kind of activate us or make us feel bad or whatever it is, kind of trigger these thoughts that don't align with like promoting healthy self-image or kind of help us in our recovery or in our progress or even just in managing and getting by, quite honestly. And so, yes, like cleanse that feed, and also consider like increasing the diversity of your feed. Like, are you only following like celebrities that look a certain way, or are you following like a broad range of folks in different bodies? I mean, that's one of the biggest ways to overcome like fat phobic culture, is to norm yourself, even if you have not been normed.
Yeah.
Body diversity, like the more that we become like familiar with the presence of different shapes and sizes of people, the less odd it will seem or the less problematic it might appear to be. And so I think that's a huge thing that can often also be lacking from our feeds, that can really not be all that helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Did we miss anything, Adrienne?
I don't think so. I think that we covered a lot. There was one question that we received, which was, how do I stay positive and not fall into unhealthy eating habits in quarantine? Yeah. Which I think we pretty much talked about, like that self-compassion piece is really what's going to keep you positive. And then, sticking to mindful eating, and really just, it's okay to give yourself a little extra love right now, and eat a little differently than you have before, and just trying to get to the root of what is affecting you, and leaning into that.
For sure. And I would say like another thing to support that would be like, I think the uncertainty piece that we were talking about earlier is part of what allows us maybe to feel sometimes like we're spiraling, or like we don't know what to do or how to manage. And I think a lot of us, whether we realize it or not, have sort of been trained to plan for the future. And so we start to think like, okay, well, when this is over, I will start doing X, Y, or Z, or I will live in this way or that way. I say, don't wait. All we know is today right now. Literally, we have no idea like when things are going to change or how they're going to change. And so all we know is like where we are today. So this is, I think, a really interesting moment for all of us to learn how to get comfortable in the now.
Yeah.
And so I would say, like, if you're thinking about trying something new, like, why not today? If you are thinking about like starting to integrate some of these skills and habits that we talked about today, like, sure, tomorrow is reasonable. But if you're like, I'm going to do this in a month, I'm going to do this when quarantine's over, like, unfortunately, we can't really rest assured that we know how any of this is going to shake out. And so not from like a morbid perspective, but from a hopeful perspective, if we can like seize the day a little bit more, I think it can also enhance our feeling of control during this time in like a very healthy way.
Yes. And also everything that we talked about today applies in not quarantine.
Yes, good point.
Yeah, I mean, everything is heightened now because of quarantine, but all of the tools that we talked about, like, they still apply if the world were back to normal.
Right.
So setting yourself up for success, you know. Any questions after this, like, feel free to reach us at the Instagram, The Body Project LUC. You can also email bodyproject@luc.edu, or you can go on the website luc.edu/wellness center. For dietitian nutrition services with me, you can book online if you just go to the Wellness Center website. And then I'll send you an email once I see your appointment booked about filling out consent forms and all of that stuff. So it's a pretty easy process. You can also call Dial a Nurse in order to book an appointment with me, which Maddie will talk about.
Yeah, so if you are just interested in either learning more about mental health services or seeking mental health services, you can start by either calling Dial a Nurse, which is 773-508-8883, or you can call the front desk of the Wellness Center, which is 773-508-2530. If you call the front desk of the Wellness Center and you want to speak to a mental health provider, you'll be prompted to leave a voicemail and someone will call you back within 30 minutes. And that is how things flow on Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 4:30. 4:30 or later during the week, or once 4:30 rolls around on Friday until 8 a.m. Monday. If you call the front desk of the Wellness Center and you want to speak with somebody, a mental health provider, you'll be prompted to press 3 and you'll be connected to our after hours counselor. So those are just some ways to kind of get into care. You can also web book an appointment for a phone triage on the Wellness Center website. And that is a brief phone assessment where you speak with a counselor. And if you are living in Illinois currently and deemed appropriate, you may be offered some teletherapy through the Wellness Center. And if you are not living in Illinois, or we believe that you might need some additional assistance sort of outside of our scope of expertise, then we can help you find resources near where you are, whether it be online for now or in person. We'll figure that out with you and help you through that process. We also have a care manager at the Wellness Center. Her name is Ashley, and you can web book appointments directly with her or by calling the front desk of the Wellness Center or Dial a Nurse. And she helps people find referrals for providers outside of Loyola. And so she can help you locally, outside of Illinois, really anywhere at all. And she'll work with you to get you into care and stick with you until she knows that you are all set. If you're experiencing a mental health emergency, you can contact the Wellness Center. You could also call 911, of course, if it's really emergent, or go to your nearest emergency room. Although, like, a lot of people don't want to do that right now, it is the best place to go if you are experiencing severe mental health symptoms or have any thoughts of hurting yourself or anybody else. So that is still an option right now, and we would encourage people to seek support if they need it.
Yeah, and if you missed any of this, you can also just go to the Wellness Center website. All of this information is there too. And we'll try and upload this video there and also to our social media.
Thank you for watching this. If you made it this far, and if you tried to participate in our Instagram Live, we're sorry, and thank you for that as well.
I think that's it. Thank you again, everyone.
Yes, be safe and take care.